Hi, everyone. It has been a little while. I've had a turbulent few weeks. It was a situation where we ended up running into a scare with my daughter's teacher, and she ended up testing positive for COVID, and then everybody had to quarantine in the house. So unfortunately, I haven't made a video in a few weeks, and was actually supposed to go out to Haunted Hills Estate Scream Park for St. Patrick's Day, but unfortunately that didn't happen because that was during quarantine time. But we are back, and we are back to talk Pittsburgh Steelers free agency. And I'll be honest, I was going to do this video on Wednesday when free agency first opened. I'm glad I waited because a lot of the big developments came today. In fact, the biggest development came today. Now, we knew this was going to be a bad offseason. We knew they were going to lose a lot of people this offseason. Bud signed for giant money. I think Pro Football Focus called it one of the worst deals. But 5 years, 85, coming off an ACL. Look, this defense collapsed when Bud wasn't in the lineup, but I wouldn't have paid him 85. I know it's not truly 85 because deals are weird and it's really only like 36 or something like that, but I would not have paid Bud what he got paid. Matt Filer went to the Chargers on a good money deal. Mike Hilton went to the rival Bengals on a good money deal. And arguably, I would say, maybe it's just me, that and also Tyson Alualu went back to the Jags. Now, they said that was family. The purpose of it was family because it wasn't like a super big deal. But Alualu was arguably a very important player for the Steelers. In fact, I would say Alualu and Hilton were bigger losses than Bud, even though when Bud got hurt, we completely collapsed down the stretch. But no, the biggest development today came in the form of first, before anything went down, Steven Nelson either demanded a trade or they tried to sign him to like a lesser, bigger money deal or something to shuffle money around. But he did not sign. And now they're looking to move him. I don't know if he requested the trade or if they said, hey, go find a trader, we're going to cut you. I'm not sure what happened there. But that was the first big development that kind of came down the pike today. And the second big development that came down the pike today was the re-signing of Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, I'll be honest, of all the free agents, and I thought we're going to get big deals. I thought Bud was going to get a big deal. I'll be honest, I thought Juju was going to get a big deal, but there's something weird going on with the NFL and wide receivers where wide receivers are not commanding the big dollars that they would normally get every other year. I think there was a report that Kenny Golladay is trying to get 18.5 in this market. I mean, good luck to him if he can. But I think, like, well, what was like the big free agent signing deal? Was it the guy from the that went to the Patriots, Aguilar? Aguilar signed a multi-year deal. But no, Juju, Antonio Brown, Kenny Golladay, T.Y. Hilton, all these guys are out there, and they're not getting the big dollars that they assumed they would have on the open market. So it's interesting. Now, when Juju signed, there was a wondering of why he, of what other deals were out there. And the other deals that were out there were Kansas City offered him a 1-year deal. With incentives. Same money as the Steelers, $8 million, with a potential to make another 3 more. Baltimore Ravens offered him also a 1-year deal, $9 million, so $1 million more than the Steelers, plus $4 million in incentives. And lastly, the last but not least scenario was that the Philadelphia Eagles offered him a multi-year deal. And he ended up coming back to the Steelers. Look, I appreciate loyalty. The Steelers appreciate loyalty. But you got to understand, in the NFL, it is a business. And their loyalty only will go to a certain point, meaning they appreciate your loyalty. But now, it's come to a situation where he's on the team for at least 1 more year. But it's not just 1 more year. Apparently, there's 2 times this has happened in this offseason. Happened with Cameron Sutton, who they re-signed, which is a good re-signing, and Juju, where they're basically a 1-year deal with voidable deals that occur the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, which is interesting. Let's see. Ben is cooked. Trade for Wilson. Their Steelers are doomed. Here's the thing on the Wilson trade. I wouldn't be. First of all, I do agree with you, and we are going to get to the elephant in the room, which is, but prior to the Juju signing and them losing free agency, it was grim. It was grim around here, and it looked bad. And I couldn't understand why Ben would come back for this. I couldn't understand why he would come back to kind of suffer through this year. Now, that's not to say it's still not grim now. We lost arguably 5 defensive starters if you count Nelson if he gets traded. That's not a good thing. But Wilson, as far as the Wilson trade, did you see what the Bears offered for Wilson? Did you see what they had offered? They had offered Kyle Fuller, another starter. I can't remember who the other guy was. 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick, I think. 3 first-round picks. So I don't know if Bears have multiple first-round picks or if this was picks over the next 3 years. And Seattle went, no, they scoffed. They scoffed at that. So if you can't get Wilson for that package, what do you offer Seattle to get Wilson? Because if you offer them the same 3, I have no doubt the Steelers could get Wilson. But, if you're putting Watt in there or Mika in there or both, sure, maybe you can get Wilson, but what's your defense at that point? It's gutted. It is gutted. And that's Watt and Mika are arguably the future of the defense. I mean, you're going to sign them both to big money deals. But I have to look beyond this year in the sense that I think this is Ben's last hurrah. I really thought last year was Ben's last hurrah. I still don't understand why kind of Ben's coming back for this. I appreciate that he's a competitor. I appreciate that he wants to win. I just don't see a scenario where, what's the line going to look like? And he may have a point. It does come down to money. I think it comes down to twofold with him. I think it comes down to money and records. See, he can I appreciate the offer to be a Browns fan, but look, for better or for worse, I was born and raised into this. I was born and raised into being a Steelers fan. I just got an offer to be a Browns fan, but no, I do appreciate the Browns are on the rise. And Cleveland deserves it. As much as slack as I can knock down Cleveland over the many years and the many heated rivalries the Steelers and Browns fans have, but Cleveland has had a long suffering fan base, and man, it's cool to see them actually be able to do something. But absolutely, I as a Steeler fan, I can't, I live and die. I live and die with the boys. I live and die with them. But yeah, when it comes to Ben, I do think there is money involved for sure. Make as much money as you can get. Every player has that rationale. But also, I do think there's a legacy thing. I think he has a chance to set some big records. He has a chance to surpass Rivers for all of those records because Rivers is retired now. So Ben is kind of the last one standing. And, he has a chance to surpass, to kind of be that crown jewel of the 2004 draft. I do feel he surpassed Eli. Look, I love Eli for beating Brady twice in the Super Bowl. I think he's phenomenal. I do think Eli's a Hall of Famer. I think Rivers has the potential chance to be a Hall of Famer, not necessarily first ballot. I think Ben is going to hold all the records for that 2004 class, and therefore I think that's a big incentive for him to do that. So that's why I think Ben's coming back. But just from a perspective of your friends are gone, same here, live and die for the Browns. And look, that's cool too. Look, like I said, you're born and raised into that. I don't begrudge anybody. It's one thing there's these fair weather fans, some celebrities or whatever, Justin Bieber wearing a different hat every day or somebody wearing something. But if you're born into whatever team you're born into or whatever, maybe you selected at a young age, maybe your parents like the team or whatever, and you're like, this is the team I'm riding with and I'm riding with till the end. I can't fault anybody for thinking like that. Eli is not Hall of Fame. Ben is. I do agree that Ben is. I think Eli will get in. Eli will get in. He doesn't have necessarily the stats that a Rivers or a Ben has. He just doesn't. But he does have 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and he did beat Brady twice. Brady, arguably the greatest, couldn't figure out Eli. Couldn't figure him out twice. Eli bested him 2 occasions, including the one team when they had a stacked all Madden team stacked with 18 straight wins. Eli did it, and that's why Eli will get in the Hall of Fame. Eli will get in just because of that, I swear. He has enough stats where he's borderline, but the Hall of Fame has put in plenty of borderline guys who have had grand moments on big stages, and he's had enough of a career and a multi-time Super Bowl champ that I think Eli will get in. Maybe not necessarily. He might not necessarily be first ballot. And yeah, the name does help because, Peyton got in this year. They deliberated for a cool 18 seconds on his name. 18 seconds they deliberated on whether Peyton Manning should be a Hall of Famer. And understandably so. I don't know why it took that long because he's a 2-time Super Bowl champ. But so Eli is going to get that same. I think he will get in first ballot. I really do think Eli gets in first ballot. He probably shouldn't, but beating Brady on the grand stage, 2-time Super Bowl MVP, and he does have some okay stats. I think he'll get in. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether he gets in first ballot like Peyton did. But when it comes down to the Steelers, Ben coming back, and we went over the scenario, money and records. But as far as him coming back, when, he was friends with people on the team. He was friends with Ryan Switzer, and Ryan Switzer got cut. He was friends with Vance McDonald. Vance McDonald retired. Marquise Pouncey, who was arguably his best friend on the team, retired. So what are you going to do? Like, he doesn't have hardly any friends. So with Juju coming back today, that's interesting in the sense that I don't think Juju would have come back if Ben was gone. I think Juju would have, went somewhere else, Eagles, or I don't think he would have necessarily went to the Ravens, but I think he would have definitely went to the Chiefs. Are the Steelers going to address the running back situation? Let's hope so. It is a sad monster currently. I'll be honest, I do not want James Conner back. I like Conner. I don't like Conner as a bell cow back. He is a complement. He is a complimentary back. Think of him like a trying to think of a good scenario. Chris Carson. I wouldn't mind Chris Carson. I think Chris Carson's going to command some top dollars. But I think I look at it. I like Conner, and I like Conner how he runs. I like his running style. I think his running style could be good. The injuries did him in. He was not a super durable back over the course of my. Let's see. Have you seen my cousin? Just said he lives next door to you. I'm not sure who that is. But yeah, Conner was a serviceable back as stated there. He was a very serviceable back, but I think he works in it as a complement to a different back. Now, if it's a situation where, as much as I would be wary of this, if they brought back, say, Le'Veon Bell on a cheap deal and Conner on a cheap deal, I would feel better about the running back situation because I think Bell still has some goods. He wasn't, the Jets were not a great situation for him. It was a cash grab. Everybody knew it. And I don't think he really wanted to play there. Now, the Chiefs just never used him. And I don't know if they used him because he was trouble getting in the system or I don't know what the deal was there. But I think he had the ability with the Steelers system and with the Steelers team to still be a capable back. And if you had him and Conner rotating in and out, with Benny and and everybody else, McFarland and there's so many other ones. But it would be interesting to see it. But I don't think they're going to bring Bell back. I don't think they're going to bring Conner back. I think the Steelers need to think like the back from Clemson. Yes, I think it may be a draft back. I don't think the Steelers draft a running back in the first round. Now, look, clock pops up at 24, and Najee Harris is there. I would consider it. I would take it. If Najee's there, you take it You take him at 24. I think he's a dynamic player, and he's a dynamic player that they won't that they haven't had for some time. They arguably haven't had since Bell. So you need that kind of dynamite runner. I think they are committed to improving the run game. Obviously, we haven't seen that so far in free agency, but they have to make a commitment to the run. And I do think they take a high draft pick, maybe not necessarily a first. That Javonte Williams would be an interesting one too. That Etienne, I think that's the guy from Clemson. That Etienne, he's like a bigger type back. Could be interesting. A lot of different scenarios there. They will go linebacker. I hope they don't go linebacker. I'll tell you what, the Steelers draft, now don't get me wrong, they've had good success drafting linebackers, but man, they draft linebackers more than anybody. They have so many, every year is another new linebacker. Now don't get me wrong, in this scenario, when they drafted Bush, desperately needed a middle. Now Vince Williams is out, and Bud's out. Alex Highsmith steps in. I think they want Robert Spillane to step in for that second middle spot. I like Spillane as depth, to be honest. I wouldn't mind if they drafted a higher middle linebacker to kind of take that second starter spot. But that is the question. If they're not taking a running back, they might have to go with offensive line, because their offensive line is a rough shell of itself right now. They re-signed Zach Banner to big money. They signed him to 2 years, $9 million, coming off an ACL in game 1. I like Banner. Don't get me wrong. I like Banner, but Banner has not shown enough to me to be like, that's the guy I'm plugging in at left tackle. I do know that they were working on a contract with Villanueva. Unless it's really cheap, I wouldn't necessarily be interested in bringing Big Al back. It's definitely not the big money. You got Dotson, who was a steal in the draft, to plug in at your left guard. Center, who knows? You brought in B.J. Finney. Finney is a good depth guy. I do not want him as my day-in, day-out starter. You have DeCastro still, although he had an off year. People are concerned about his inflated salary, somewhere he might have to go. And then Chooks at the right tackle spot. It's going to be a shaky line year. And once again, another reason. Why is Ben coming back to be behind a shaky line? Is it all money? Is it all records? Why is it? Running backs need to be special to be drafted in the first round. Agreed. And in this circumstance, I think Najee is that special. Now, let me counterpoint myself in the sense that I've been wrong before, because the year they took Bell, I myself and damn near everybody else said Eddie Lacy. Eddie Lacy coming out of Alabama was that dominant, can't miss back, and they had a chance, and second round pops up, Lacy's on the board. They take Bell. Everybody's so confused. So confused. Why would you take – Lacy was on the board and you took Bell. Why'd you do that? History proved the Steelers correct in that assessment, because Eddie Lacy only lasted a few years in the league and was quickly out. He was gone right after that. So, definitely like a 5-year guy, 6-year guy. Bell, arguably, let's put it this way. Bell's at that same milestone currently, but Bell had far more productive years than Lacy ever had. Far more, considerably better. So it's going to be interesting to see what Steelers do with the run game. They are committed. They said in their offseason they are committed to bringing the run back. What does that mean? Because they wasted a 4th-round pick. For me personally, on Anthony McFarland last year. 4th-round pick could have went a lot of different directions, and they used it on McFarland, and McFarland didn't show much. They wanted a little Willie Parker guy that could scoot with the ball, and he never broke contain one time all year. And so, Benny the year before, so they're drafting 4th-round running backs consistently, but I need a bell cow guy. I need a 3-down guy. Bell and Bettis have been your best backs the past 20 years, and you're absolutely correct. Bell, Bettis, Willie Parker. Willie Parker had a nice few-year run where he came out like him was a nice compliment to Bell, or sorry, not to Bell, to Bettis, where Bettis would just come in and just churn those yards, and then Parker would break out to a long gain. They're still looking for someone like that. They're still looking for a giant back that will just eat up yards, and they're still looking for that fast back that can cut out the edge and keep going. They have not found it since those two. And Bell was a different beast altogether. Bell was just a patient, set up the blocks run. I've never seen anyone run like that, where, usually hole opens up, boom, they're through, or hole opens up and they, go off tackle or something. But Bell would just sit there patiently in the backfield and wait and just bet that. So those backs are rare find. And sadly, it's a situation where I don't think, I'd be interesting to see what the Steelers are going to do. I'm going to have my my mock draft that I do a week before the draft every year, and most likely you will see a running back early in that draft because it's a wishful thinking mock draft. I always do, and I want, obviously want the Steelers to do what's best for the Steelers, but as a fan, as someone who likes talking about the Steelers, I'm going to put my input there as well. So glad the Browns have a two-headed monster. That's right, Chubb and Kareem Hunt are one of the best tandems in the league. I like what Chubb has done. Kareem Hunt, a lot of catches out of the backfield. For the Steelers, Bell at his best point was like those two combined, where he would just make those catches out of the backfield, but also do those monster runs where he was tough to bring down. So I'd like to see the Steelers get back to that. I don't know if it's, I don't know what they're going to do. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. Like, as I mentioned before, I don't necessarily want to see James Conner back in the Steelers uniform because, as they have shown in the past, when they have Conner on board, they're like, well, he's our guy. So look, we have our guy. And, that guy, for, all the Steelers offensive line faults, of which there were many last year, that guy led to the 32nd ranked rushing offense in the league. I think they were 32nd. And that's not good. So blame that on the line. Blame that on the short passing game. Blame that on Connor and Benny Snell and everybody else that couldn't get past the block. But if you want a commitment to the run game, you better bring in a dynamite runner. I don't know who that is for the Steelers. It's interesting. They with the Juju deal, with the Sutton deal, they saved a considerable amount of money this year. They're kicking the can down the road, as the Steelers always do, knowing that the Steelers are in a situation where currently, and giant money deals will change this. Giant money deals for Watt. Giant money deals for Mika Fitzpatrick are coming down the line. But the Steelers currently, next year, with a projected, I think, 180 cap, have the most salary cap space in the NFL. They, of course, only have 17 players under contract for that 150 million plus space that they potentially have. But they've already ate up 20 of that in these new Juju deals, in these new Sutton deals. So with those two deals out of the way, you still got to sign TJ Watt to giant money. You still got to sign Mika Fitzpatrick or pick up his option at least. That'll kick some money. You have to determine what you're doing at quarterback next year. Because I don't think Ben can come back. I think this is Ben's last stop on the tour. I don't see a scenario where you bring Ben back. And if you bring Ben back beyond this year, you better draft a quarterback. Or you better bring in a quarterback to groom to take over the spot. Because this is also Mason Rudolph's last year. So Mason Rudolph, he's coming into a 4-year deal. They touted him as a first-round pick. And now he's coming to the end of his deal, and he's not going to get a chance to see what he can even do before he's gone. Because you can't pay him giant money as someone who you never saw do anything except for that 1 year when Ben got hurt and he ran into all types of problems. He got concussed by Earl Thomas. He got smacked over the head by Myles Garrett. He had a rough, and he was just not good and got beat up by Duck Hodges a few of those games where Duck looked like the superior quarterback. Now, fast forward to this last year, week 17, Browns are fighting for a playoff spot, and kudos to Mason Rudolph staring adversity in the face, staring Myles Garrett in the face, who he had a conflict with, and he played a hell of a game in that week 17. With the Browns playoffs on the line, they almost won that game. They came very close to winning that game, which, the Browns were fighting for a playoff spot for the first time in 17 years, and Mason Rudolph came in there and had an all right game. And, you're not going to see, barring a Ben injury, you're not going to see what Rudolph could bring, if anything. Now, do I think Rudolph is some, Patrick Mahomes waiting in the wings? Absolutely not. Sorry, I had a phone call. No worries. I appreciate you watching, Browns fan of all, watching my Steelers fan. I appreciate it. But you're not going to see what Rudolph will bring before his contract's up. And like I said, I don't think he's some quarterback that's going to come in and dominate the game, but potentially a second to third tier guy. I don't know. I don't know. And I think that was some reservation about bringing Ben back, was you wanted to see what you had in Rudolph. Now, wouldn't necessarily be thrilled as a Steeler fan going into the season with Rudolph at the helm and no other options. I think they would have had to draft quarterback. I would still love the Steelers to draft quarterback. I don't think this is the year, unfortunately, at this point, unless you're really just packing it in this year and hoping for the best next year. I wouldn't mind seeing a quarterback being groomed behind Ben. The question is, what quarterback? Now, if one of the big dog quarterbacks falls to 24, I would be interested. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence will not. He will be gone at 1. I saw a mock draft that was interesting that had Justin Fields falling all the way to 24. I'm not surprised by this, but also I don't trust an Ohio State quarterback for anything. We have an Ohio State quarterback that was a first-round pick on our roster currently. His name's Dwayne Haskins. Haskins, they picked up in the offseason, who was, for the Washington football team, never could end up being their guy. And people were concerned about him being the guy. And anytime he had a chance to be the guy, it blew up in his face. But he's going to get another chance with the Steelers as a potential third quarterback on the team. Or the hope is that he beats out Mason Rudolph and you trade Mason Rudolph to someone that is a really QB-needy team. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't trust Haskins, and really I don't trust any Ohio State quarterbacks, and that includes Fields. Prove me wrong, because name an Ohio State quarterback in the past 10-plus years that has done anything in this league. Anything. I can't think of one. I can't think of anything. Like I said, I'm no expert. If someone goes like, oh, this guy or that guy, but no, none of them ever did. None of them ever did hardly anything. So I wouldn't necessarily trust Fields. And the rest of the QBs are a mixed bag. A lot of people were talking about Trey Lance. He played 1 year. They showed his pro day. He had a couple pretty deep balls and everything, and they looked real nice. But that's no pressure deep balls. Let me see what pressure looks like on him. Then we'll talk Kyle Trask, Mac Jones, different guys, big college arms, but that only goes so far. Is there someone that's going to? Why are you messing with me? Is there someone that's going to be the guy moving forward? I for the Steelers, I don't know. And I don't know if it's necessarily worth that, a first-round pick for somebody that's not going to be the guy. You're a goober. Is this what you got me?
I was about to have a panic attack.
Oh.
Because I heard it
That's fine. That's fine. But yeah, so So if the Steelers are not taking a quarterback in the draft this year, and I wouldn't trust anybody beyond the first round. If they're taking a guy, another second round, third round guy, unless it's someone that's one of these highly touted guys, say like if a Mac Jones fell to the third round, the Alabama quarterback, or someone like that, a Trask fell to like the second, third round, then you consider it. You consider it just as someone who'd be waiting in the wings. If a Sam Darnold popped free from the Jets, or they wanted, some level of compensation for Darnold, maybe you take that. Oh, hi, Camden. Welcome. Thanks for watching. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Steelers fill these positions, because there's a lot of positions to fill right now. If they trade Steven Nelson, which is seems to be something that's going to occur, you suddenly have a major corner need. You have a nose tackle need that Alu took up. Who knows who's holding the bag there? You have a situation where you're going to need arguably a middle linebacker, or at least middle linebacker depth. You need outside linebacker depth. A lot of defensive depth you're going to need. You need a safety that you can groom, because I've criticized Terrell Edmonds in previous live streams. He's not it. And this is his last year on the team. I think if there's an option to get a safety, whether it's a veteran safety in the remainder of free agency or safety in this draft, you consider it. Offensive-wise, you need more offensive linemen. You need more offensive linemen that you don't have on the roster currently. You will need arguably a tight end. They've been chatting up a lot of tight ends at these various pro days and these various events. So you need one of those. Wide receiver, I think you're good with bringing Juju back. I don't think you necessarily need to add any other receivers. They added that guy beyond Juju today, which was the big news. A undrafted guy that I guess had a cup of coffee in the Texans organization, but never had a pro day out of Georgia. I guess Colbert signed him on the spot and showed some burning speed, a 4.40, from a guy. And, is that somebody that's going to compete with Ray to take over the kicking duties? Maybe that's somebody you bring in. So I think you're good receiver-wise. Running back, major hole. Just like the line is a major hole and tight ends do. And arguably quarterback behind Ben, because if this is Ben's last year, and arguably this is Rudolph's last year, so you'll be a free agent unless you can keep him for cheap, you have to start grooming a QB. They have holes to fill, and the draft is not going to do it unless they are trading back quite a bit. They have to trade back, you could say they could trade out of the first round and collect a bevy of picks, or trade out of the second round and collect a bevy of picks. But is that something that will fill all the holes on their team? I don't think so. I think there's still free agency work to be done. The problem is they don't have a ton of money to do it. And there's no major, there's a few running backs on the board. I think you can put a Band-Aid on the running back position, but saying you want to improve on the worst ranked run defense from last year, putting a Band-Aid is not a great thing. Unless you're getting like a Carson type, and Adrian Peterson has expressed interest in playing for the Steelers. I love AP. I wish it was, 7 years ago. But he's still a capable running back, far more capable than what they got, unless they think Benny's the guy. But they ran into this issue before where they thought Connor was the guy. So if you think Connor's the guy and he's not, and you think Benny's the guy and he's not, you're setting your team back how many years? So it's a concern for me moving forward to see what the Steelers' run game is going to look like. Because I'll be honest, I don't think it's going to be all that good unless they get a guy like a Najee Harris, or they get a guy like a Javonte Williams, I think his name is, or a Etienne. I'm going to butcher his name until he becomes a Steeler, and then I'll learn it. But one of these top running backs in the draft, maybe if they get one of those guys, maybe that's something that they can, they can turn that run game around. But if they do not get one of those guys, and they do not get anybody notable in the draft, and they think they're going to run into this next year with Benny, McFarland, and Jalen Samuels, they are going to have probably the worst ranked rushing offense again. And that's no fault to Benny necessarily, but really to everybody else. So it's a rocky year. I feel like it's going to be a rocky year for the Steelers. I tend to be optimistic, but I feel the Browns have gotten better. I don't know if necessarily the Ravens have gotten better, but the Ravens they always play us pretty good. And the Bengals are going to be better just because they're going to get Burrow back. And, Mike Hilton was a great player for us, and I think he'll be a great player for them. I really am high on Mike Hilton, so it was a bummer to see him go there. But I understand it because, they're getting big money dollars that the Steelers weren't going to give to them. But not necessarily like the sky is falling because Juju resigned. A lot of people think like, oh, okay, all right, well, we got Juju back, so we're good. Now, don't get me wrong. Juju was far and away the most capable Steelers receiver last year, and it wasn't close. I hope that the Steelers receivers go into their situation where they're not dropping the ball constantly. Deontay Johnson had a rough 2020. He couldn't hold on to the ball. So, Juju's far more capable than that. The hope is that Claypool takes the next step, and Claypool's your one. Because as they always said, and the big knock on Juju is Juju's not a one. Juju is a very, very high 2. And if that's the case, with Claypool taking over the 1 spot and arguably the double, because I think he can break contain on doubles. I feel that confident in Claypool. That leaves Juju to put up some, when AB was on the other side drawing doubles production for Juju. Juju could get some, I think Juju will have a bounce back year if Claypool is the one drawing doubles. If they're still drawing doubles on Juju, it's reversed. Whereas Juju's going to struggle this year and Claypool will be dominant. And it may reverse in the year. So it may be a situation where Juju starts out the 1 and they're drawing doubles on him. Notice Claypool is running away with the game. Then they draw double on him the rest of the season. That is something likely that could happen. But what I'm gonna address to you, either watching this live or watching this after the fact, what are the Steelers' biggest needs heading into this season? I can think of quite a few. We went over it. But running back, for me, has to be arguably one of their top ones. Right now, do you trust Benny Snell toting the ball 16 games? I do not. I like Benny. I like when he's shown flashes to be a capable runner. But that is someone you bring in off the bench if your starter gets hurt. And you're like, well, this guy can do kind of what the guy did. Like, that's Benny's role. Benny is not your running back for 16 games. He can't be. He can't be if you want to revamp your running back situation. So, running back, tight end, offensive line for offense. I am not. So, I'm actually married with children. So, but that is something that you have to consider, that the Steelers are not going to bring in a quarterback. They're not going to bring in a quarterback this year. Probably not. And they're not going to get into a situation where, it'd be nice to see Ben groom a QB for the future. That's probably not going to happen. Juju needs a wide receiver to draw him attention. Exactly right. And I think Claypool can be that guy. I think Claypool can be the guy that will draw double teams to get Juju open. And I think that's something that will occur this year. So, like I said, I think people are going to realize that Juju is not necessarily the guy. And Claypool will become the guy this season. At least that's the hope. But yeah, running back wise, I throw my hands in the air. I don't know what exactly they're going to do. And it's concerning to me. It's concerning to me as a Steeler fan. It should concern you as a Steeler fan that they don't have a plan necessarily in place unless they're drafting someone, which is very uncharacteristic of them. The last time they drafted a running back in the first round, it was Rashard Mendenhall. Did not go so well, if people remember Rashard Mendenhall. Let's see. Juju is meant to be a 2 wideout. No, that's correct. Juju is a great number 2. He is a great slot guy. He's a great slot guy, a great number 2, not a number 1 guy. And I like Juju, and I think Juju has flashes and potential to be that, but I think Juju has shown when he was given that responsibility that he did not deliver the goods, unfortunately for him. No offense, I think your wide receivers need to grow up a little and stay humble. You know what? That is a lot of talk in Pittsburgh. You know, I'm partly surprised that Juju came back because Juju does, let's put it this way, Juju does a lot of charity work here. A lot of great things for the kids. He's always doing kid events, free events, giving out money, giving out things. But I'll tell you this, they hate him here. Not everyone. I like Juju. I like Juju a lot, but there are certain media guys and certain people that hate his guts, and they hate Claypool as well, because they're saying Claypool's getting bad influence by Juju. I don't know if I don't agree with that in the sense that, yes, here's the thing. When the Steelers ripped off 11 straight wins last year, and you could say they were against inferior opponents, but it's the NFL. They ripped off 11 straight wins. Now, they collapsed after those 11 wins. They collapsed after those 11 wins, but they ripped off 11 straight wins. And in that time, Juju danced on each team's logo. They did 11 straight times. No concern. No one said anything. Suddenly he dances on a logo. They start losing, and everybody's up in arms. Oh my God! Oh, the Bills are like they're gonna do the dancing, and we'll do the winning. Then what happened right before the Bills playoff game? They showed a video of them dancing at practice. The same thing happened with Baltimore and Tennessee. Tennessee beat Baltimore in Baltimore. They started dancing around on Baltimore's logo. Baltimore got upset. Baltimore beats Tennessee in the playoffs. What does Baltimore do after they beat Tennessee in the playoffs? They dance around on their logo. It's a never-ending cycle in the NFL. So Juju dancing around on people's logo was all fine and good when they were ripping off 11 straight. Then suddenly they go on a losing streak, and suddenly it's some big issue, a big problem with the league. It's literally the same thing. And if other player did it, it would be not a big deal. But for some reason, Juju, when they were losing, it became a big deal. But yes, I agree with you in a sense that sometimes they take it too far. Claypool did in the offseason when he was talking about the Browns getting beat the next week and stuff. He needs to, they got beat handedly by the Browns in that game. Handily. So he has no room to talk about anything in that regard. Hi.
What was in that cupcake?
Yeah. Cupcake? Oh, big mess. Big cupcake mess.
Did you answer the question
so let's see.
everybody wanted to know?
Yeah, they're still gone.
Are you gay?
I did answer that. I'm not. I said I'm married with children. Chiefs need a big wideout so they can have all fast and small wideouts. Chiefs have been my team since 2014. Look, it's interesting. The Chiefs put up money for Juju this year. The Chiefs put up money for Juju in this contract, and they offered him more money than the Steelers, and he ended up taking coming back to the Steelers, which was interesting because it would be interesting to see Juju with Tyreek Hill. Juju would take over the Sammy Watkins spot because Watkins is a free agent. That would have been interesting to see how that went. Now, as a Steelers fan, it would have been devastating. I have a shirt that says the Browns is the Browns. Thanks, Juju. Here's the thing about that comment, and I know he got such, especially with the game result, he got such crap for that comment. The Browns is the Browns. But here's the thing. as much as the Browns look like a team on the rise, and as much as the Browns beat our ass in that game, for 15 plus years, that statement is exactly correct. And any Steeler fan or whatever is the Browns were the Browns. They were the Browns for 15 years. And, anytime they'd come, they'd get super hyped. They'd be like, this is our year. It's going to happen, the thing, and then dud. And then dud. Now they're finally turning a corner, which is great for the Browns and great for the city of Cleveland. But, he put out that statement. And if the Steelers win handily, say the Steelers just beat the Browns the same way the Browns beat the Steelers in that game, what could anybody have said? The Browns are the Browns. But the Browns showed something in that game. And therefore, they're going to run on that. Because the NFL is a parody league, people love taking little bites and they turn them into these big bulletin board things. The Browns had 17 years to prepare for that game. They had a rabid fan base in Cleveland to prepare for that game. They did not need a Juju comment to fire them up for that game. If they weren't fired up for first playoff game in 17 years, that's a concern on them, not necessarily a concern on what Juju said. But yes, should he have said that? Probably not. Did it add fuel to an already burning fire? Perhaps it did. But yeah, that's on Juju. He's got to mature up. I think he's the voice of the running back, the wide receiver room at the age of like 24. He became the savvy veteran of the wide receiver group. Probably a little too early for that. You might need an older wide receiver to bring in, but they don't have any room for them. They have all young guys. But you can tell Mahomes needed a big wide out in the Super Bowl. Tyreek is too small. So here's the thing on Mahomes in the Super Bowl. They needed a line in the Super Bowl, an offensive line. They were getting run through. But yes, they did also need arguably a tall. Tyreek Hill's fast, but if you can't get the ball to him in stride, he's not catching 50-50 balls with a corner. They're both jumping up at the same time. He's made a couple of nice catches, but he's a speed guy through and through. They don't have a big body guy that can jump in and get those catches. Maybe like Demarcus Robinson, but outside of him, no one. So they definitely need that for sure. I don't know what they are going to do with Washington. What do you mean? And what do you mean as far as like what they're going to do with Washington? Oh, you mean James Washington? Washington's going to be there as a depth guy, potential as the four wideouts and the four wideout. Washington was steady Eddie for the most part compared to most of those wide receivers last year. He was making some circus dynamite catches for a possession guy. They always write off Washington as a possession guy. As a guy that's going to be just sitting there, making just the straight catches, but he had some dazzling catches last year. And, I probably would have put him over Deontay Johnson in a couple of those games. Now, the hope is that Johnson finds his game. That's the hope. The hope is that Deontay Johnson, because Deontay Johnson has those moves he's one of the best cut on a dime receivers in this league. He can run the routes. He can run the routes and he can run them perfectly. But man, he has to catch the ball. Wasn't Washington Rudolph's big hookup guy in college too? Yes, he was. And if you watch way back in my Steelers wishful thinking mock draft that year, I had the Steelers taking Washington and I had them taking Rudolph. And I was right in both. I had them switched up. I had Rudolph in the second, Washington in the third. But they were dynamite for, I think it was Oklahoma State? Is that where they were at? Something like that. But they were dynamite. I think Washington won Best Receiver Award and Rudolph won Best Quarterback. They were lightning in a bottle, those two, and neither one has really reached the potential of what they could and should have been, unfortunately. Washington for a second-round guy should arguably be someone that is that's starting for this team as a second-round guy, because Claypool's a second-round guy, and Claypool's going to be the guy next year. I have full confidence that Claypool takes that next step. Washington, as much as I like him and as much as I feel he's a good depth guy, he has not taken that step to being a starter on this team. Johnson, who was a third-round pick, outshined him. sadly, and that's even with the drops, because next crap, Johnson's going to be in that starting position next year over Washington, unless Washington makes some big jump. It's I want to feel confident about this team, but right now there's a lot to be determined, and there's too many holes to fill. The draft is going to make a big difference moving forward, and I will be back with post-draft coverage as well as my wishful thinking mock draft. The week before the draft, I put out a wishful thinking mock draft of not necessarily what everybody does, where they put out the same draft every year and they go, these are the guys that we're throwing darts at the board. I'm like, here's the guys based on what the Steelers' needs are that I hope that they pick. I hope that they pick. Now, will they pick them? I've had mixed results. In fact, the worst year I had was last year, where they took none of the guys that they took not one. But every year it seemed I had one guy on the list that that was somebody that they ended up taking, which is for a 300 plus player, 400 plus player draft. I'm thrilled with that as not being an expert. You can tell our list at AB that Steelers wanted to be with Brady. Well, yeah. AB kind of talked his way out of about 6 teams now. And it'll be interesting to see if AB goes anywhere else. I doubt he does. Washington needs to be a good combat catcher, but he needs to take the next step. Yeah, he does. He really does. It'll be interesting to see what he ends up being. If he ends up, because it's his last year too. Like I said, like Rudolph, it's his last year. It's Washington's last year too. So it'll be interesting to see if they even re-up him. I'm going to the draft. Now, the draft is in Cleveland this year, is it not? I thought about actually going to the draft myself, but I don't know what version of the draft we are going to get. I had it penciled in the books to actually, because this is the closest the draft's ever been to me, being in Pittsburgh, to taking the trip to Cleveland to go to the draft. But I don't know, with COVID, with everything going on, what type of draft you're going to have in Cleveland. Obviously, I'd love to go. I've been looking into the Hall of Fame and Hall of Fame enshrinement, because there's a lot of Steelers going in, including my favorite, Palomalu. So I would like to go to that as well. But, with COVID and everything, it'll be an interesting next couple months to see where we stand as far as that goes. What position do you think they will go in round 1? I think, unless something changes, they will go either running back or offensive line. Now, if they are trading Steven Nelson today or in the next few days or at some point here, you may have to look at corner. But the Steelers are not great at drafting corners. In fact, they're bad at drafting corners. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I feel like the Steelers need to start working on getting a quarterback from the draft or something, because Ben is going to leave soon probably. Yeah, they really do. In fact, they're arguably too late. They should have drafted a quarterback probably a couple years ago. And in fact, they might argue that they did draft a quarterback years ago, that they drafted Mason Rudolph. But here we're coming up on Mason Rudolph's last year. He won't get a chance because Ben's coming back. So he won't get a chance to show what he can do. And then he'll be gone as a free agent. And Ben will probably be gone because Ben, I think this is Ben's last year. So if they're not grooming a quarterback this year, unless they think Haskins is that guy to groom, because he's still very young. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't trust an Ohio State quarterback for anything, because I haven't seen one example of Ohio State quarterback doing anything. So, it'll be interesting to see what Haskins does this year, and maybe they feel that because Haskins was a first-round pick, he has some form of something that he can bring to the table, and it'll be interesting to see what they can do. Now you guys are going to be wanting to go to the draft. Man, I wish I knew what Cleveland's draft would be like. Are they limiting people? Are they doing the whole stage and everything? Because like I said, Cleveland's a 2-hour drive. I've been up to Cleveland many a times. In fact, if I known certain things were open, I wouldn't mind going to Cleveland again. There's a few things I do want to check out and film some videos for this channel for, things I've been eyeballing for a while. But I don't know the uncertainty of what's going on in the world. I just don't know if that's something I'm going to do anytime soon. But yeah, Pittsburgh Steelers, let me know your thoughts. Do you feel this team is better? Because I'll be honest, as it stands now, they're arguably far worse. They are far worse than what they have been, at least last year or the year before, as it stands now. Now that can change. That can definitely change. Certain player positions, they sign some players, maybe they trade for a player, they draft a few players in key positions. They, catch lightning in a bottle on one of these drafted guys. They end up becoming a star because it happens in the NFL every year. George Kittle was a 4th-round pick, and Richard Sherman was a 4th-round pick, and Antonio Brown was a 6th-round pick, and Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. Everybody has these stories of these players that came out of nowhere and ended up being starters for the team. I feel like Saquon Barkley would be a great back if he could stay healthy. Saquon Barkley is a monster. I mean, he has, this dude came back from an injury that has put running backs out for a whole year. Not the ACL, but the one that was I think a high ankle sprain. And he was only out 2 or 3 weeks. Usually running backs take a whole year to recover. I think he is really, really good. But it'll be interesting because now he's got the first taste of an ACL. Some running backs don't recover back from ACL. Some of them recover back I know there was a big concern about Adrian Peterson, that after he tore his ACL, he'd never be the same back. Well, he was the same back. In fact, he went on to, I think, 2,000-yard season the next season or the year after or something like that. So he has I don't put it past Barkley because I think Barkley has that ability to be that giant back. I wish, as a Steeler fan, I wish we had him because, like I said, I still don't know who's running the ball. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I wanted to do a Steelers free agency video. Obviously, big doings today with the Nelson potential trade, with the Juju signing, and unexpected in both circumstances, very unexpected to see what what they. You're getting Juju back, and like I said, I think he's a great receiver for the team. I think he meshes well with the team. I have no problem with him coming back. Losing Steven Nelson for me was not part of the equation. I'm concerned about that. I have big concerns about what they're going to do moving forward. Now, if you brought in, say, an Adoree Jackson, who's a free agent now, a Kyle Fuller. Now, they're both going to want giant dollars that the Steelers do not have. I just don't want a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. I do not want, maybe they feel that Sutton, because they paid Sutton money, can play outside. And, and Justin Lane, that they drafted the same year as Bush, I haven't seen him yet. He was a 3rd-round guy, have not hardly seen him on the field. Could be another bust of a pick by Colbert in corner-wise because he does not have a good track record of finding corners. Senquez Golston never played a snap. Artie Burns, 1st-round pick, bust. And this Justin Lane kid, he can't make the next step. There's guys coming in from the AEF and the XFL that are taking his snaps. So, I thought Steelers would go to the Super Bowl, but it just started going down. Because after those 11 wins, I thought they were going to the Super Bowl. And it didn't matter if they weren't playing people that were any good because they were winning. It didn't matter. Everybody was coming in, win. You know how hard it is to rip off 11 straight wins? I know people said that, they're just playing bad team after bad team. I have seen plenty of good teams lose to bad teams. Plenty. I've seen Super Bowl teams. What happened with Tampa Bay this year? They lost to the Bears. Tampa Bay lost to Nick Foles this year. And they won the Super Bowl. So I've seen plenty of teams lose to bad teams. So the fact that they were ripping off 11 straight, but then they forgot how to play football. It's just simple as what happened. Either that or they changed their schedule around so many times that they finally, I think that Ravens game that they shuffled around about 16 times before playing it on like a Wednesday afternoon at 4:00 really hurt them. And I don't think they ever recovered from that. But let's see, Sutton should step up, hopefully. I mean, Sutton should step up, but Sutton, great depth guy, starter guy, hopefully. I hope he is. I mean, I want him to be. But, it'll be interesting to see what the Steelers do. Like I said, there's many questions still to be determined. But I think I'm going to wrap it up here, just a little over an hour talking Steelers, talking NFL, talking with Cleveland Browns fans, talking with Steeler fans, talking with everybody in the NFL about anything. I like getting on here and chatting with you guys. Thank you, everybody, for for throwing out comments, throwing out questions, keeping me to a different, keeping me on the same, just go different paths, because I can talk 4 days. I love talking football, and I like when football's back, which we're getting slightly closer to that, and the draft will be next month. But yeah, I'd be curious to know more about the Cleveland draft and to see if they're actually having a draft, because I wouldn't mind going, actually. It'd be a cool experience. I thought about maybe going to the Philadelphia one, because that was, I think, the next closest one, because a little bit closer than New York. And Nashville's a bit too far. But I know in the next few years that there was talk of, I still haven't seen any talk of having a draft in Pittsburgh. I think in Point State Park, it would be awesome, but I have not seen word of that. They're going to Vegas, I know, next year, because that was the one that's supposed to happen this past year. Vegas is a bit too far, although I wouldn't mind going to Vegas. But I'd like to see a Steeler one. I know they mentioned a Cleveland/Canton one at some point, or maybe just a Canton one. Canton's very close. So I wouldn't mind seeing a Canton one, because I would go up for that. But guys, everybody, thank you so much for watching. I will keep this up for anybody that missed it and they want to check out and they want to, feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe. Like to support me on Patreon, I will put a link in the description below. Like to buy a t-shirt, TomWasHere t-shirt, you can do so. There'll be a link below there. Links to my eBay store, my Instagram, my Clubhouse, and all types of stuff. I have links for days down there. But guys, thank you so much for watching. And until, I'll have some videos coming up soon. I have a couple unboxings on the way. And hopefully maybe a couple locations I'd like to get to in the next couple weeks. But like I said, with COVID, who knows? It's kind of a mixed bag. But thank you so much for watching. And until the next video, we will see you soon. But until then, bye, everyone. Thanks, guys, so much for commenting. Always a great time talking with y'all. Bye, everyone.